Welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. Now we're progressing to becoming a Shantaya in this part of the story of Treviso. And a lot has been going on, so just to recap, this story started 2,000 years ago with the sculpting of the Jade Jaguar of Uxmal by Chotek. The Jade Jaguar was struck by lightning, grew into a deadly panther that dragged Kukulkan over the edge of the pyramid and down into the cenote below, getting scarred along the side of its face. And then thousands of years, hundreds and hundreds of years later, Octavio Chotek Sanchez finds the Jade Jaguar in a cenote deep in the well. And then maybe even another decades and decades later, we come to find the thief, Remesio, whom we now know is a twin. And he had a brother named Roan. And he's getting ready to break the old man out of the jail who had stolen the Jade Jaguar. But touching that obsidian arrowhead around his neck got him thinking back to when everything began to go wrong. And now we're learning about when everything began to go wrong. And about the mines of Minas Nuevas and the Shantaya, and even the legend of that talking parrot from so long ago. What does that parrot have to do with the story? So now here we are. There's a huge explosion. Everybody's getting worried, but the boys are mostly concerned about becoming a Shantaya. So let's continue with that. Soon after the explosion, the twins arrived out of breath at the meeting area near the reservoir behind the dam. They met members of the rest of the tribe who were beginning to gather. Soon everybody was there and the ritual began. Along with 3 other Shantaya youths, Roan and Remesio stood in line with their tail feathers held behind their backs as they faced the 100 or so members of the tribe. The Shantaya did not keep written records, so nobody knew exactly when a youth would have his 12th birthday. But this ritual took place every 4th moon, and from that, tribe members could determine approximately when it was time to become initiated. It was a simple coincidence that today really was Ronan Remesio's 12th birthday. The first Shantaya boy planted his feather in the dirt and recounted the story of how he had managed to win it. The tail feathers generally came from an unattended harpy chick while its parents were off looking for food. Harpy chicks spend more than 6 months in their nest before they're ready to fly and search for food on their own. It would be up to each boy to climb the high tree, blend into the surroundings, and wait, sometimes for days, until both the mother and the father harpy flew off to look for food. At that point, it was a simple matter of stealing the tail feather from a baby bird that could not put up much of a fight. Still, the mission demanded patience, bravery, and resourcefulness. The second boy, Tepui, was a good friend of Roan and Remesio's. He told how he had waited for 4 days before both the mother and father eagle had left their chick temporarily alone. He had eaten nothing during that time, but was able to slake his thirst by licking the morning dew off the leaves in his tree. He confessed that he had seriously considered leaving his tree without his tail feather when the parent eagles finally left together and had given him his chance. Each of the Shantaya boys had bagged his feather before the heavy rains had started 7 weeks earlier. The tribe already knew their stories, but it was important that the exploits be recounted in public, where other tribe members could ask questions and confirm their capabilities. The Shantaya were very impressed with Tepui's tale, as he had shown great fortitude and stamina. Latia, the only girl this time around, had been ready for months. Looking at the tribe, she proudly placed her feather before them and shared her story. Everyone knew she would one day lead the Shantaya. Only Roan and Remesio had waited until the last day, today, to try for their tail feathers. Their parents had kept them home during the heavy rains, and the Shantaya didn't think the boys would be able to complete their task in such a short period of time. But they were twins. Working together, it was always possible. The 2 boys approached the tribe together and simultaneously planted their feathers next to the previous 3. There was a collective gasp when the tribe realized the 2 feathers were 3 times as long as the others. They were adult feathers. The tribe began to stir and ask questions among themselves. How did they do this? There was clearly great admiration for this feat. An adult harpy is a dangerous bird whose talons are razor sharp. Taking a tail feather from one was brave indeed. Taking two was unimaginable. They demanded to hear the story. Rowan looked down at his feet, too embarrassed by the fuss to say anything. He pushed his glasses back up on his nose and looked hopefully over to Remecio, who was grinning broadly. But Remecio winked back at Rowan, relishing the moment. When Remecio told the tribe how silly he and his brother felt after climbing so high only to find a nest with unhatched eggs, there was good-natured laughter. When he told them that they had no choice but to wait and get their tail feathered from the mother harpy, there was a great cheer. The twins never felt closer than at that moment. They looked at each other and couldn't imagine life without the other. Some deadly results of the explosion. The intricate maze-like system of tunnels that connected the gold mines up and down the Rio de Oro was the first area to be affected by the explosion set off by Bocho's magnifying glass. One mine after another collapsed because the wooden support beams that acted like a skeletal frame in the mountains around Minas Nuevas could not support the weight of the shifting earth. Miles and miles of honeycomb tunnels began to implode or collapse with a nightmarish domino effect, sending billowing clouds of dust out the entrances. For 15 minutes, the people of Minas Nuevas ran hysterically in all directions. And then, just as quickly as the mine implosions happened, they stopped. The people paused, too. They breathed. They waited. It was over. At least it appeared to be over. Buildings near the initial explosion had been turned into piles of rubbish, and telegraph lines were down. Many of the town folk had family members who worked in the mines. They ran toward the mass of debris, crying and vainly calling out names. Others walked cautiously toward the mines, afraid but determined to help with any rescue effort. Antonio and Rebecca were running in the opposite direction, toward the school. There they learned that their boys had not shown up that day. They were skipping school for the first time in their lives. Turning to Antonio, Rebecca cried out, "What do we do?" Holding his wife in his arms, Antonio looked upriver at the dam and simply said, "Pray." Now about the tattoos. Part of the Shantaya initiation ritual, including the tattooing of the new tribe members. The Shantaya, like many other indigenous Indians of the rainforest, had many colorful tattoos on their bodies. But there was only one tattoo that was common to each member of the Shantaya, and that was the tattoo of a giant anaconda snake, which curled around every male tribe member's left ankle. The anaconda snake can grow to as long as 30 feet and is capable of strangling and eating animals as large and as dangerous as crocodiles. Except for man, it has no natural enemies. Shantaya admired the anaconda for its stealth and its ability to avoid trouble, qualities they themselves tried to live by. Once everyone had shared their story about earning their tail feather, they went over to the tribal artist, whose quills worked quickly and efficiently, using the green and brown colors of the anaconda. The final touch, a thin black line going from the snake's eye to its jaw, added authenticity to the impressive likeness. With the artists working together, the entire process took about 15 minutes. Once tattooed, they were then set out to swim the distance across the reservoir and back. That usually took another 30 minutes or so. The swim was another indication to the tribe that they were capable of fending for themselves, though in reality, Shantaya children learned to swim at an early age. They were all excellent swimmers by age 6. Mostly, it took some of the sting out of the excited youngsters' freshly tattooed legs. Once they took off for their swim, the tattoo artist went to work on the next new member. By the time the artist got to Remecio and Roan, many of the tribe were standing by the walkway along the top of the dam cheering on the swimmers. The first boy had just returned, but Tupui and Latia were still in the water. To no one's surprise, Remecio wanted to be the first of the twins to go. He asked for his tattoo to go on his right ankle, just to be a little different. The artist, working on his leg, looked over at Hassan, the Shantaya leader, who nodded his head. Rowan stared in amazement as the tattoo artist grabbed Remecio's right ankle and fashioned a two-headed anaconda, with both heads assertively looking outward. The two heads represented the unique and magical bond that existed between the twins. Their destinies depended upon each other. The Shantai had no doubt that the two boys would go on to great things. Remesio and Roan looked at each other with big eyes. "This is the coolest thing we've ever done," cried Roan. "The coolest," agreed Remesio, a large smile breaking across his face. Tepui finished his swim as Remesio began his. Then the artist went to work on Roan's left ankle, tattooing the same two-headed snake, only this one with the heads looking inward, their backs to the world. Crumbling mines. The devastation of the mines in Minas Nuevas had a numbing effect on the people. The destruction had been sudden and fearsome. Houses on the mountainside had simply fallen into the ground. There was no way to tell how many people had died. Those unharmed shuddered to think how many people were still alive but buried beneath the deadly rubble. Rescue efforts got underway quickly, and every able-bodied person with a shovel began to dig through the mountain debris. Every so often another mine would cave in, and then the rescuers would dig even faster. 3 hours after the initial explosion caused by Bocho Cepeda's magnifying glass, the last chain of mines collapsed somewhere upstream of the dam a good 2.5 miles from Minas Nuevas. The earth trembled violently on both sides of the reservoir. A deadly wave. The tattoo artist stopped abruptly at the violent tremor created by the last mine implosion. They had just finished with Roan's anaconda. In the sky above, the harpy eagle kept a baleful watch. The earth trembled again, while those who had stayed to watch Roan receive his tattoo simply stared at each other. There was total silence in the jungle. Something was very wrong. The hair on the back of Roan's neck jumped to attention at the eerie intuition only one twin can have for another. "Remy!" screamed Roan. He was up and speeding towards the dam before anyone could stop him. The sting in his leg registered with him as he ran, but he ignored it. The Shantaya members who had been watching the swimmers from the top of the dam ran back to shore as soon as the earth stopped shaking. Those with smaller children toted them over their shoulders like potato sacks and raced as fast as their legs could take them. Roan did his best to avoid the oncoming traffic, yet was bumped repeatedly as everyone else was trying to get off the dam. A couple of frantic Shantaya women grabbed Roan and tried in vain to turn him back, but he tore loose from their grip and kept moving forward, moving toward Remesia. The Shantaya were not in a full-blown state of panic. Nobody ran over anybody in an effort to get off the dam first, but it was a dangerous situation. Everyone sensed it. Remesia was the only one left in the water when the first tremor hit. He didn't feel it, and he was unaware of the turmoil that was taking place on the dam and back on dry land. Their friend Tepui had remained on the dam and tried to get Remesio's attention by yelling. When that didn't work, Tepui dove into the reservoir, only a 4-foot drop since the water level was so high from all the rain, and stopped Remesio in mid-stroke. The two, working together, were able to scramble back up to the top of the dam with little trouble. Roan had gone a fair distance toward Remesio along the top of the dam when he saw Remesio and Tepui crawl out of the reservoir. Except for those two, he was the only one left on the dam's walkway. Roan calculated his next move. His brother was safe for the moment. Should he continue toward Remesio and Tepui, or should he head back to dry land? The decision was made for him. The mountain walls surrounding the reservoir behind the dam could no longer support themselves. Their insides, hollowed out from centuries of mining, finally gave in to the movement of the shifting earth. Land at the top of the bare mountains on both sides of the great reservoir came crashing down into it. It was a spectacular avalanche of dirt and mud. For almost a minute, the three boys stood still, wide-eyed and gaping at the horrifying fury of Mother Nature. Trees that might have held the mountains back had been cleared long ago. A major rule of physics states, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. Millions of tons of abused mountain earth had just slid into a reservoir filled with almost to its brim from 7 weeks of heavy rains. The water in the reservoir had to go somewhere. The water had to go out. To the amazement of all there, a sheet of water 200 feet tall and as wide as the reservoir sprang up like an angry Poseidon emerging from a turbulent sea. The brothers stared hopelessly at each other from a distance. Remesio and Tepui had no chance to get back to shore, but they were close to the access shaft leading into the hollow center of the dam. Remesio, waving his arm at Roan and pointing to shore, ran quickly to the door leading to the shaft and thankfully found that the lock he had jimmied open 2 years earlier had never been fixed. "Row, go back!" he screamed, still pointing to the shore, as the mighty wave closed in like a malevolent creature released from hell. With shaking hands, he removed the unsecured lock and threw open the door. Remesio pushed Tepui down the shaft and took a last look at his brother, who had started the run for shore. Roan had gotten halfway there when the freakish wave threw itself over the dam, sweeping him away. Remesio roared his brother's name, felt an urgent jerk at his feet, and then lost consciousness. The force of the wave was catastrophic. It roared down the Rio de Oro, sparing nothing in its course. Minas Nuevas, the village that had survived for 300 years through economic booms and busts, breathed no more. There would be no birthday cake today.